Thank you very much. So it is 12:32 and I am going to call the regional board meeting for Wednesday, May 13th to order. I do have confirmation of quorum. And if I could get somebody to please move adoption of the agenda.
Move adoption.
No, use
Can
chat.
we do it in chat, please?
I did use chat too. There.
Okay, thank you. And seconded by Director Unger. Is there any additions to the agenda?
Yes, I would like to make a brief, very brief library update to the board under new business.
We'll do that under director's reports, actually, at the end.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Is there any other additions to the agenda? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the agenda as amended. Is there anybody opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried. I have no petitions and delegations. We're on to the adoption of the minutes. Can I get somebody to please move the in chat, please?
Done.
Thank you. I have Director Colburn and Director Anderson. Thank you very much. Is there any additions or is there any errors or omissions in the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the minutes. Is there anybody opposed?
And they all tell.
Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried. Is there any business arising from those minutes?
Yes, I just want it noted that this is Andy here. Noted that
I'm sorry, I'm getting some background noise from.
Yeah. Well,
a little bit before she left.
Sorry.
She was teaching a little bit English and was able to help me with my Portuguese also.
Trying to do double duty here. So
yeah.
All I want to say is that it showed that I voted against the water approval and that was inadvertent. So please delete that.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Yates will take that consideration.
Could I ask a question, Chair?
Okay.
On that SRD. Hello.
Can you hold it? Can somebody please turn off whatever device they've got going? Thank you.
That's better.
Thank you.
Okay, so on that,
a question?
On that same issue that Director Adams just raised, SRD motion 28520, the water agreement was approved by the SRD board. And I just wanted to ensure, was that executed as per the board's direction last meeting?
I'll take that to staff.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it has been.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
And I'd like a copy of that if I could, please. I'd like a hard copy of that.
Okay.
From our administration.
That's direction to staff. Thank you. Is there any other business arising from the minutes?
Sorry, there was so much background. I did not hear what Director Adams had said, and I can't type fast enough, or I can't seem to get this working. So sorry I didn't use the chat. I did not hear what Director Adams said.
Director Adams indicated that there was an error in the minutes regarding his vote for one of the, I'm sorry, I can't remember which number it was.
SRD 28520.
Okay, thank you.
It was the Canberra River water agreement.
Yeah.
And he wanted his vote to reflect he supported it.
Yes. So, which will be fine.
Michelle.
So is there any other business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, I will move forward. I have no public considerations, no notice of motions. I do just have a quick chair's report. I want to welcome very much, strong welcome to the acting Mayor Ives from the village of Sayward, who is now being appointed as their representative to this board. Congratulations, acting Mayor Ives, and welcome to the board. I want to welcome back Director Abrams. We hope you are well on your way to being recovered, and we're glad you're able to join us today. So thank you very much. I also just want to bring up that it's been brought to my attention that I actually have been accused of using the technology to stifle directors by muting them. I just want to make it very clear to all directors that all directors have the ability to mute all or mute one. And it's up to the individual directors, though, to unmute themselves. We do not have the technology to unmute themselves. I have not used this technology, truthfully, because I do not know how. But there is no conspiracy here, and I take huge exception to the fact that I've been accused of that. I do, however, appreciate that some directors are having difficulty with the technology and operating the new technology, and that is why Mr. Schmooland is available on this call for any sort of technical help. And he has prioritized his time and his schedule for any directors that are having problems with this. So if you're having a problem with your technology, Mr. Schmooland is there to help you 100%. So I just want to do a quick shout out actually to our very own Mevy Swift in our RD office for being proactive during this time of COVID-19 and also being very creative as she's making her very own handmade face masks, which I have been given the authority to put on and model for anybody that can see. And if you are interested at all in getting one, then please reach out to her and she will certainly hook you up. So thank you very much, Mevy. It's been absolutely fantastic what you're doing. I also just want to put out a reminder there to please use the chat function to get into the speakers queue. I have a staff member who is assisting me with that list, so we will be keeping it very, very succinct, which is good. I will also only call for the opposition vote. So please use the chat function to record your opposition, and I will try my darndest to call out all of the directors in opposition before I call whether that vote carries or has been defeated. So if we just keep to that kind of format, which we did before and it worked really well, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much. That's all I have. I have Director Lee, who has moved my chair's report. Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you, Director Unger. Is there any questions on my report?
Michelle, sorry.
Yeah.
It's Charlie. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Did you not get my chat post?
No.
Nope.
Because I sent it and I see the last I had was on May 8th, except for till today after they added Bill Ives to the team. But and then I had somebody else working my controls on the screen before Tom had the agenda posted.
Okay, can I please get Mr. Schmooland to work with you on that? Thank you. On my report, I have Director Anderson.
Thanks. It was actually the public consideration that got jumped over so quick I couldn't unmute myself and jump in. Just
Okay.
if after the chair's report we could go back for a moment. Thank you.
Certainly, I'll call the question and then we'll go back. Thank you, Director Anderson. Okay, I see no other questions on my report. I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried. And to you, Director Anderson.
Thank you. I'm not actually entirely sure what the public considerations portion of the agenda is used for. We almost never use it. But my question is simply around, are we anticipating finding a way, as long as we're meeting electronically, of bringing either reporters or applicants or delegations on a specific basis into these meetings? Is there some way of opening them up publicly to people who have business before the board during the meetings? And thank you.
Okay, I'll go to CAO Leach.
Thank you. So we've had a few requests for delegations, and I believe all those delegations have not said there wasn't any urgency to them. So we could provide some electronic connectivity to them if they wanted to present by delegation. What we can't do is invite people to the meeting to just, you know, witness the meeting through this technology. So there just isn't the ability without them fully participating with the technology we have and the software we're using for them to just live stream, if you will, watch it. What we're doing is, you know, this is being audio and video recorded. We are posting those minutes on our website, and I would say, are about 4 to 6 weeks away from having our technology installed in our boardroom that will allow live streaming to it. But at this point, there's just not the ability to have people participate in the meeting without being actively involved 100%, and we just can't have that.
I would just that professionally reporters sit in the room with us if we meet in person, and are professionals and don't interrupt us.
So Director Anderson, there's a huge amount of feedback that's happening with your line. So can I get you to mute any other devices that are in your area?
I have nothing on.
Okay.
And that it would, I think, be entirely appropriate to invite media, there's only ever 2 or 3 in the room at a time, into this venue like we have in person. And from a technological point of view, I think we could certainly give them the access information. And I'm just wondering if that's a decision that's being made by the chair or the board or staff. Thank you.
I think ultimately that will be a decision, or can be a decision, of the board. I have advised the chair and anyone that wants to know about my opinion about inviting them and the limitations that we have or lack thereof. So unless the board wants to make a change to that, my advice has been that we cannot allow their participation in it at this point. But of course, you can make a motion, the board can change that, and we can invite anyone the board wishes to invite.
Okay, so at this point, that has already been discussed, and that was discussed at the last meeting. I'm not willing to reconsider it at this point, as we're sort of going backwards in the agenda. I do have Director Unger and Director Wally. I'm wondering, are you speaking to the public consideration, or are we moving forward? Director Unger.
Consideration.
Okay, Director Unger.
Consideration.
Okay,
I was just looking, sorry, Chair. My question is the technology that we're looking into at the boardroom to try and do stuff, is this going to be a huge cost to the board as far as financial?
I'm not sure that staff has the ability to answer that at this time, Brad. So let's you take that as a consideration, and we can talk about that at the next meeting. Thank you, Director Wally.
Yeah, I was simply going to say that all the media has availability of the recordings, so they don't need to be in present. It's the same thing.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Charlie, we can see your comments. Thank you very much. I'm glad you're back online there. With that being said, I'm going to move forward. If I can get somebody to please move the municipal services minutes. Thank you, Director Wally. Director Adams, thank you very much. Is there any discussion on those? I'm seeing no discussion. I will call the question. Is there anybody opposed? Seeing no opposition, I will say that the Municipal Services Committee minutes are received. I am going on to staff reports. Number 1, if I can get somebody to move that, please. Moved by Julie Colburn. Thank you very much. Seconded by Director Unger. Thank you very much. This is the financial impacts of COVID-19. It's on there for receipt, and I will go to staff, to our CAO, please.
Oh, I can speak on this.
Okay.
Yeah, we're 2 months into the onset, but we had a chance to review our year-end numbers, the budget and cash flow, and we're not expecting any major negative financial impacts. As far as revenue, most of the corporate service side is funded by taxation and grants, and we don't collect the taxes directly. We get them from the province and municipalities, so we're not expecting any interruption there. The municipalities now have a lot of support from the federal governments, and it was expressed in their communications that that would be to facilitate any of their payments to the regional districts or MFA by the traditional deadlines. On the expense side, customer or corporate services is now affected by 5 positions that have yet to be filled as COVID's kind of delayed the hiring. So that's the major financial impact for the year that we're expecting. Add to that, many of the major conferences and training opportunities have all been canceled, so staff are traveling less and moving around. So leading into next year's budget, we're going to be expecting a relatively higher surplus, but we'll be looking for direction on reserve transfer levels and such as we see what the recovery looks like. And yeah, any questions on that?
Thank you. I do have a question from Director David.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to express concern that there doesn't seem to be any progress on filling the bylaw enforcement position, because we do depend on that quite a bit in the village of Tassos as we contract for the SRD.
Okay, through to Mike.
Oh yeah, the bylaw. Yeah, that's.
I can probably answer that.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So just as a whole in local government, most jobs in local government are posted and filled through Civic Info. And just to give you an overall provincial kind of view of that, those postings has gone from almost 500 postings down to about 80. So nobody is posting jobs, nobody is interviewing. And so there's been a provincial slowdown collectively in hiring that. So it's not the SRD isn't making any traction towards that. I think postings will start to come out maybe in the next month. It's our intention to fill the positions, and that position was just vacated, 2 minutes before COVID started, so timing was really bad. But it is a collective challenge to interview people, get people to travel, and so on and so forth. So it's on our priority list. It's not something we're not pursuing, but it's one of those things where we're just going to have to wait a little bit and to see when there's the ability for people to travel, people to interview. So that position's high on the list.
Okay, thanks for that, Dave.
Okay, is there any other discussion on item M1? Seeing none, I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, seeing no opposition, I will call the financial impact of COVID-19 corporate services report carried. On to number 2, which is the financial plan amendment for the Cortez Island wildfire planning. I have a mover, Director Anderson, seconded by Director Colburn. On receipt, I have 2 staff first, and then I'll go to Director Anderson. Staff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can speak to this if you wish. So this is really an opportunity for the board to authorize the work for community wildfire protection planning on Cortez Island, which had been inserted into the work plan, but we currently do not have it in the financial plan because it was approved following adoption of that plan. So this is really to get it into the stream so we can move ahead this year.
Okay, I have Director Anderson, then Director Cornfield. Director Anderson, you have the floor.
Thank you. Sorry, I thought I was speaking to the next one. So on this one, yeah, great to have received the funding in full support. I'll have a more fulsome comment on number 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Cornfield. Director Cornfield, are you available?
Yeah, there. He needs to unmute.
Director Cornfield, can you unmute?
I'm getting unmuted.
Thank
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, and now I gotta try and find my agenda thing. There we go. So do we have an agreement with Cahoos, and are they an approved partner? Anyone hear me?
To
Yeah.
staff, the CAO, please?
Yeah, I can speak to that, Madam Chair, if you wish.
Okay,
My understanding is yes and yes.
So we have an agreement with them?
That's my understanding. However, Sean Koopman, who has been managing this file, is currently away. I would have to confirm with him, but I have absolute certainty that he has discussed all of this with the Cahoos, and that there is at least an agreement, a verbal agreement, if not a written agreement, in place.
Okay, then the grant is for partial funding. And so does Cortez have the other monies in the current financial plan?
Madam Chair, this is a regional service, so it would be already in the budget if the motion is approved to proceed, then it would not require any amendments to the amount of money coming from the regional district.
Okay, because the letter was pretty clear that it was only partial funding for this project. So someone else has to fund the other part.
Madam Chair, that would be the regional district.
okay. Thank you. Director Anderson?
No, just a comment that it is my understanding from the outset of the application, the Cahoos has been a full participant. I don't know the legal terminology details, but they certainly did write in support. And I know that in collaboration with the community forest, they have been an active initiator of this since the beginning.
Thank you. To our CAO?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just a reminder that this application was supported and endorsed by the board. We have received it. All this is an amendment to the financial plan to include it in the plan.
Okay, thank you. To Ms. Nelson, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've confirmed with Sean Koopman that the Cahoos has passed a banned resolution in support of the application, and I am just confirming funding. One moment, please.
Give Charlie meat. Yeah.
Okay.
While Annico's doing that.
Madam Chair,
No, just 1 second, please, Director.
I apologize. Madam Chair, I can confirm that we have full funding through the grant for this project.
Thank you very much. I have Director Cornfield.
Okay, and I guess where does the remainder of them?
Abby.
Whose kids are checking?
Yeah, please, reminder, if you're not talking, can you please mute your microphone?
So my concern is, where does the other money come from? It's a regional thing, so does that mean we're paying, not Cortez?
To our CAO, please.
Well, I believe Annico just reiterated its full funding.
Sean has confirmed, Madam Chair, that this is full funding through the grant.
Okay, thank you.
Because the report doesn't indicate that, but so be it.
Okay, thank you. So we are still on receipt of number 2 of the Chief Administrative Officer's report. I have nobody else in the queue, so I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I will call that carried. On to Part B, that the 2020-2024 financial plan be amended to reflect the expenditures of $26,000 in grant funding from the UBCM Community Resilience Investment Fund for Cortes Island Wildfire Protection Planning. I have that moved by Director Anderson, seconded by Director Unger. Is there any more discussion?
Yes, it's Brenda Lee here. I do not believe that the expenditure of the excess funds is necessary, and I think
Director
that
Lee,
we should.
Director Lee, I think you're on number 3. We're doing 2B right now.
Curbside debris removal?
No, we're on Part B of the financial plan amendment.
Okay. No, I don't have any comment on that. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Seeing no other comment, I'll call the question. Is there anyone in opposition?
I'm opposed.
Thank you. Director Cornfield is opposed. Seeing only one in opposition, I will call that carried. Thank you. On to number 3. Can I get somebody to move receipt? Director Anderson has moved receipt. And Director Adams, thank you very much. And on receipt, Director Anderson would like to speak.
Thanks. My real hat's off, I'm assuming, to Sean Koopman for this. I had spoken with him on a few occasions about the fire ban and people's desire here to not have a bunch of coarse woody debris on their property that they weren't able to burn. There's literally almost no chippers on the island. I've been trying to get one myself. It's exceedingly difficult, which leads to a real fire hazard. And people have been wanting some kind of, couple-day reprieve to allow burning, which hasn't been happening. So I think this is an incredibly creative workaround. And I would love to speak with Sean, I guess, offline at some other moment about how this would happen in such quick fashion. But I'm just totally in support of using funds that we already have that are not ours, rather than returning them to the funder, using them for something that is a real acute need given the fire ban. Thank you.
Okay, I have Director Cornfield next.
Unmuted. Thank you, Chair. I had a question, and my understanding, according to the letter on the grant that we received, was there was restrictions based on activities regarding fuel reduction. That this was supposed to be a plan as opposed to actual activities. And so surplus to the development of the community wildfire protection plan still would require approval of the grantor. At least that's the way I read it. So I just wanted to be clear that these type of activities are approved under the grant.
Okay, through to staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So a couple comments. One, I think it's appropriate just because we're chatting about Sean and being in contact. Sean has had death in his family and is away for a period of time. So if anyone's trying to contact him, keep that in mind. Second of all, Director Cornfield is correct, and Sean has pre-approval on these works, as it was money that was left over, if you will, and to kind of utilize it in the best interest, he asked the funder for approval for this plan, and it was supported.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Yates?
Exactly what I was going to say, Madam Chair, so nothing more to add.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anybody on the list, but I believe this is the one that Director Lee wished to speak to. Director Lee, did you wish to speak to receipt?
Yes, thank you. I don't believe that we should be spending this kind of money putting bundles of wood on 1 or 2 ferries to come over and be transported when you can just simply put your pile safely in an open space in your yard where you can burn it when it's free to be burnt or chip it when you're free to do it. I think that to be conscientious with taxpayer dollars, if we didn't need the money for the wildfire protection plan that we did, we should send that money back, because the province and the feds are spending piles of money, and we need, you know, PPEs and other things more urgently than a door-to-door service for debris from Cortez and Quadra. It's not right. We should be showing integrity and sending money back that we don't use.
Thank you for your comments. I have Director Cornfield.
Thank you, Chair. I tend to agree with Director Lee to a certain extent. I supported the wildfire protection plans for 2019, and at the time we approved that motion was to do the planning. Their previous plan had actions identified that were never completed and never carried out. And to use this there without consideration of other activities that were necessary for the service area that it covers, which is the whole regional district, to look at the other activities that were never completed under the previous program. And so I can't support taking money for the for activities which have not been considered in light of the other activities that were undone or were not done the first go round. So I think we need to look at the whole thing.
Okay, thank you. Director Anderson.
It's too bad that Sean's not here. I didn't see a plan outlined in the report about how this woody debris would be dealt with. That was the questions I had for him. I think to assume that they would be transported off island is assumption at best, and I highly doubt that would be the approach. My assumption would be they'd be chipping in place, just like what happens when the highways, you know, clears along the sides of the roads, etc. So I would just ask that we don't make assumptions about this program that hasn't yet been articulated. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no other speakers on the list, and we are on receipt. Seeing no other speakers, I will call the question on receipt. Is there anyone opposed?
I'm opposed.
Director Lee? Okay, seeing only one opposed, I will call that the receipt is carried. On to Part B. Can I get somebody to move? Director Unger is moved. Director Anderson second. Is there any other discussion? Director Adams.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really struggling with the use of the chat for something more than moving or seconding or stating your opposition. To have a conversation in there is, we have repeatedly asked that not happen, and I would ask for that again, so that we keep the comments open and public for those that are so concerned about the public being able to see this. Then let's be transparent. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Director Adams. And I believe that to be true as well, just to remind people that the public does not see any of the chat function. So next in line is Director Cornfield, please.
Okay, I will not be supporting this part. As the previous, not the previous speaker, but Director Anderson, when she commented on assuming, that's assuming that it would be ground up and spread on the ground just like it was in the other. So there's two assumes. I will not support it because I know that there was work that remains undone from the first plan, and this was supposed to be a plan to deal with stuff, and then we can look at what the allocation should be, whether or not that should be Cortez and Quadra, or whether it should be Area D or one of the communities like Sayward. I think we need to have further discussion, and it's unfortunate that Mr. Koopman is not here to be able to talk about it, but I supported it when it was the plan part. When it comes to activities and spreading the rest, I think we need to look at finishing the work that had begun before.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I have no other people in the speakers queue, so I am going to call the question on part B. Is there anyone opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay, please put it into the chat. Director Wally is opposed.
Director Lee.
Director Lee is opposed.
Cornfield.
Director Cornfield is opposed. Okay, seeing 3 opposed, part B carries. Thank you. On to number 4, which is the Hoskins Channel landing. Can I get somebody to please move receipt? Director Kerr, thank you very much. And a second, Director Unger, thank you. And to staff, Mr. Yates, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the report is really to bring back to the board a motion that was tabled a couple of months ago, subsequently referred to the Electoral Area Services Committee for comment, and the committee felt that it was appropriate to reiterate the board's previous position regarding Hoskins Channel's use as a landing site, but to indicate that working as a partner with the Marine Trails Network was appropriate, and the board should be prepared to continue with that.
Okay, is there any discussion on receipt?
Just a sec.
Okay, seeing no discussion on receipt, I will call the, oh, sorry, Director Cornfield.
Yeah, I would just ask if everyone else had received a letter this week from Mr. Gray clarifying the role of the BC Marine Trail Association or Society.
I'm not getting anybody typing anything in, so doesn't sound like it to Director Cornfield. So on receipt, is there any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question on receipt. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call receipt carried. On to part B, that the following motion be put to a vote by the board, that a letter be written to Mr. Gray to reiterate the board's position and adding in that the SRD board is willing to work as a cooperative partner in recreational use planning and management in the region. I have Director Kerr, seconded by Director Colburn. And discussion, Director Cornfield.
Yeah, just in regards to this, I have a long history, having been instrumental in setting up the Marine Trail Society. I would like that if we're going to write to Mr. Gray to reiterate the board's position, that position be part of the motion. And so I would move an amendment.
Okay. So through to staff, we understand what that position is, correct? That would just be direction to make sure that it was articulated in that letter?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I believe the motion is simply whether or not to put this issue back in front of the board. It was tabled previously.
Yeah.
So rather than the wording of the motion itself, it's really, the question is, does the board agree to put this back on the table right now for further debate, yes or no? I believe that's the intent.
Okay, thank you. I have Director Abram.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, Ken.
Hello. Yep. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so I was glad to see it back here after having a discussion at the Electoral Area Services Committee, having comments such as the sort of addition at the end of that paragraph, which came from Director Cornfield, I believe, with his expertise with the Trails Committee. That was added into that, and that basically is, that letter is basically a reiteration of.
Okay, Director Abram, you're cutting in and out, so.
Sorry about that. Internet problem, you know? It's our connectivity. Can you hear me at all?
Yeah, we can now.
Are you hearing me? Okay.
Yeah, it's just very faint.
So I'm
No, I'm sorry, Director Abram. I'm going to have to go to Director Cornfield because we've lost you again. We'll try and connect again in a minute. Director.
Did you say me?
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, I drove out and had a look at Hoskin Channel and the site. I even took photos, which I will pass on to staff. The letter I received from Mr. Gray says that they are not advertising as a launch site, and in fact, they have recommended against us by the steepness of the slope, which is obvious when you get out there. And however, they do reiterate that it is public property, and they are willing to sit down and be cooperative, as is everybody else, but that land is public and is available for the public to use.
Okay, thank you. Do we have Director Abram back yet?
I'm trying. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now,
Hello,
yes.
hello. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Barely.
Okay. All right. How about now? Can you hear me now? I'm walking
Yep.
around with my cell phone waving it in the air. Okay, so yes, you're correct, Director Cornfield. And we have indicated to them that we are willing to work with them. But as you saw and hopefully took pictures of the reality of the situation out there, there is no room for anything, especially a launch site. And I'm glad that they have agreed to say, okay, fine, it's not a launch site, but it's not a launch site in that they're saying basically for boats. They're not saying that you can't go down there with a trailer with 8 kayaks on it, unload them for an hour, and then try and find a place to park a 1-ton van with an 8 kayak trailer on it. That's like at least 40 feet long, if not more. And that is on, there's no room. There's no room for the residents, for the visitors, for anybody. So, you know, that's been the point all along, and the residents are extremely concerned that our board support them in saying, look, you know, there's launching and parking at Rebecca Spit Park. There's launching and parking at Harriet Bay Marina, which is public transport facility, or sorry, fisheries notions. So, you know, it's not like there are no other sites. There's also sites at Open Bay where people can actually park on a road. There's a, you know, couple miles long of road, straight road, where people can park and leave long vehicles like that, and they can walk a couple of 100 feet with their kayaks to the water at pretty much any tide. So, you know, I don't feel that anybody is being shorted as far as being looked after, as far as their needs for the public that they serve. Because the public that I serve is the Discovery Islands, and you know, they are overcrowded. Now with the COVID crisis, of course, we're being faced with an even bigger problem with the fact that people are just ignoring the warnings, the pleas that come from the islanders to start, you know, obeying the distancing, obeying the all of the other issues around COVID-19, and it's just making it worse by having the numbers of people that are crammed into these little spots where you couldn't possibly have a 6-foot spacing between people. when they're standing alongside vehicles and kayaks. It just, there's no room. The road's only 20 feet wide max, and truck takes up 10 of that, so you're pretty short. Anyway, I want to say I'm not opposed to working with BC Trails in any way, shape, or form. I would just like them to respect the wishes of the Outer Islands, for which that landing site was installed and maintained by the Regional District. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Director Cornfield. You can have that discussion with Director Abrams offline. Anything further? Thank you. So I see no other discussion on Part B. If I can, nope, nobody in the queue. I'm going to call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'm going to call Part B carried. Thank you. On to number 5, which is the electronic meeting requirements. I need receipt. Thank you, Director Kerr, seconded by Director Unger. Thank you very much. To staff, please. Mr. Yates.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the report really is a follow-up to a board direction that was given, I believe, 2 meetings ago, to talk about electronic meetings as one of the 3 things the board felt was worth investigating at this point with respect to the procedure bylaw. It is complex enough that we believe it's worthy of its own discussion, separate from the other issues, which are later on in this agenda. And so at this point, staff are recommending that we basically hold tight and wait to see what the province comes up with in the next few weeks before making significant changes to the board's procedure bylaw, unless the province is going to make wholesale changes to the Local Government Act in respect of electronic meetings. There's not a whole lot that the board will be able to do with that. So that's the nature of the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion on receipt?
Yes, Director Lee.
Director Lee?
Thank you. I looked up the Local Government Act, and I'm not contradicting Mr. Yates, but the Local Government Act says electronic meetings shall be in accordance with local procedures. And I know that, we changed our bylaws at the Vancouver Island Library Board to allow for virtual meetings, not only in emergencies, but in the regular course of business, because the participants in our meetings are geographically so diverse and so isolated that it will actually make it better for them. And so we've been proceeding after we changed our bylaw to allow for electronic meetings. Then we have had 3, and so far so good. And we're saving quite a lot of money in flight and hotel costs for people to get from Haida Gwaii and wherever they're coming from. I think that changing the procedures bylaw to allow the option for electronic meetings, like in-person meetings with the option of attending virtually, might be a very good thing for our board. I think we should look at it whether there's a COVID emergency or not.
Okay, thank you. I have Director Colburn and then CAO Leach. So Director Colburn, you have the floor.
Hi there. I just wanted to thank staff for the report and reiterate just kind of what Director Lee was saying. I think that the kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with COVID is absolutely sound as we're taking direction from the province. However, I do believe that this should come back to us when even when this crisis that we're facing we have a better handle on what the outcomes are going to be. Thank you.
Thank you. CAO, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to let the air of some people's sails, the Local Government Act does not allow, outside of the pandemic and the state of local emergency, does not allow you to participate electronically out of convenience. So unless something through the Local Government Act and the province changes, when we are out of the state of emergency and that temporary order is lifted, that we will not be able to participate electronically out of convenience just to save money. That's not an option.
So I have nobody else on the speakers list, so I'm going to weigh in on this one. I participate in meetings with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and this has been brought up. The current state of emergency that we have and the current orders that we have regarding the ability to meet without the public present and to meet currently by electronic participation is tied directly to the state of emergency. So as soon as the state of emergency goes away, so does the order that allows us to meet the way we are meeting now. That's been brought up several times by different directors and local governments across Vancouver Island and across the province. And the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing is currently looking at a new order or amendments to the Local Government Act and Community Charter so that we still have the ability to do that. I think what this next motion is doing is staff saying until we actually see what the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing comes up with for amendments to the Local Government Act, it would be silly for us to proceed and do policy, as we are certainly not going to be able to preempt any of what they have. So I'm going to go to Director Adams and then back to Director Coburn. So Director Adams, you have the floor.
Thank you, and thank you for both CAO Leach and the chair's comments. Completely agree, but I think we can be proactive and put suggestions and comments in to the minister for the post-COVID period. I really think of those times where there is very inclement weather, and for those that are driving in what would be at times very severe and unsafe conditions, that having the electronic meeting capability is in the best interest for our fellow directors' health and welfare. And if we want to go beyond that and put in a recommendation that this can be considered for special meetings or odd meetings that can reduce our travel expenditures, that's where I concur with Director Lee. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Coburn?
Thanks. I just typed that into the chat. Director Adams absolutely had what I was going to say in mind, so I will refrain. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. So I have nobody else in the queue.
I would like to speak one more time if possible.
Yes, thank you. I really do suggest you use your chat, Director Lee, so I don't miss you. So
sorry.
But go ahead.
I agree with Director Adams that this could be very useful in inclement weather, but I would also think it would be useful in any kind of emergency, not just COVID. So if there's a wildfire somewhere that would prevent people from getting to a meeting, if there's an earthquake, and assuming we still have electricity to do electronic, there's all kinds, floods, emergencies. There should be a procedure, an emergency procedure at the regional district where we would default to if we couldn't meet in person. And I think we should just start preparing it and suggest to the province that beyond COVID-19, that other emergencies should be considered for remote meetings, remote meeting participation. And I think we should be prepared to tell the province what we think should be in the LGA.
Okay,
Thanks.
Thank you. Director Davis?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to concur also. I agree with Director Adams regarding this, and I'd like to revisit this down the road. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Yates?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to clarify for directors, right now with the statute, if a director is unable to attend a board meeting in person, they may participate electronically if the board's procedure bylaw allows it. So the province has transferred that authority in those cases to the local government, and our bylaw currently does allow that.
Okay, thank you very much. So I have no other people in the speakers queue for receipt. So I'll call the question on receipt. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call receipt carried. On to part B. So I'll be at the will of the board, depending on if they move B. Director Colburn, thank you very much. Do I have a second? Second, Director Unger. Is there any other discussion? Director Colburn.
I'm wondering, by moving this, it says held in abeyance. So will this come back? Understanding what Mr. Yates said, that we can participate electronically, but I believe that in our procedural bylaw, there is a limit of how many can. And of course, we'll be seeing this once we get the new technology at the actual physical board building. So I'm just wondering, because it says abeyance, if it will come back to us eventually. Thank you.
Thank you. Through to staff.
Yes, Madam Chair, it will at an appropriate time.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other comments? Seeing no comments, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call the electronic meetings part B carried. Thank you. On to number 6, which is the Cloetses Treaty Table representation. I have it moved by Director Colburn, seconded by Director Davis. And in the queue, Director Lee and then Director Wally. Director Lee, you have the floor. Director Lee.
This in no way reflects how I feel about John McDonald, but because he's no longer a director and he's no longer on our board, I do not feel it's responsible to appoint someone to this position. We did appoint alternates in January, and although the Cloetses have said that they like having John McDonald coming, he does not represent the board, and I think we need to ensure that our board is going to be represented and reported back from these meetings.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I have Director Wally, CAO Leach, and then Director Cornfield. Director Wally, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I agree with Director Lee on this. First, most I'd like to say that we directors are elected by our constituents to speak in their behalf and to support their best interest in it. But most importantly, we are elected to be accountable to our constituents. In John McDonald's case, he voluntarily withdrew from public office, is no longer accountable to anybody in the public, and no longer has been elected to represent their views. So as much as I like John and think he'd do a great job, I think this is inappropriate and I'm opposed.
Okay, thank you. I have Director CAO Leach has forgone his cue, so Director Cornfield. Director Cornfield, can you unmute?
There we go. Sorry.
There we go. No problem.
I will mimic what the other previous two speakers have said. John was appointed by the board to represent this board. And as well, we appointed an alternate director, and I believe that was Director Lee. We do not appoint non-elected people to represent the board. And I could see a transition strategy to mentor an alternate or other person that was coming in, but they need to be able to report back to the board. That's why they sit on the TAC, is to represent the board. And First Nations can say, yes, they like that, but First Nations do not choose our representative. This board does.
Okay, thank you very much. Director Anderson.
Thank you. If the board does not support this resolution, and I don't have a strong sense one way or the other, I'm more than happy for Director McDonald or John McDonald to be there, but if not, that's fine. But my question is, if we do not support this resolution and we do not appoint somebody else, does it default then to the alternate? And I know that the alternate director, Lee, has had very strong views on the Tlawitsis, which I don't think have consistently reflected the board's views. So I'm just wondering if it would be the board's will to have the alternate stand as our delegate, or provide somebody else. I'm just curious to know from a staff perspective, if this fails, what our options are. Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Director Lee.
Director Lee,
I would like to just correct Director Anderson's comment that I have problems with the Tlawitsis. I do not. When they set up an addition to reserve in Area D, I had opposition to the federal government not consulting the people in Area D, and I was quite strong on that, but I was not, against the Tlawitsis. I'm not, I'm just like everyone else on the board as far as First Nations relations go. And, I don't see the problem with being the alternate.
Okay, thank you. So this board went through a process of appointment, and the board did appoint by resolution a representative and an alternate. So if the board had had a problem with that at that particular time, then that would have been the time to make sure that that alternate was who they wished it to be. So I have no other reason than to move forward with the alternate. So that at this point, if ex-Director McDonald is not representing us, that is who would end up being there. So I don't have anybody else on the speakers list.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much.
I will call the question on receipt. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll move to Part B. I have Director Unger, who has moved Part B, and seconded by Director Colburn. And Director Colburn, you have the floor.
Hi there. I'm just wondering then if there will be an appointment made for a representative in a timely manner. Thanks.
There is already a representative present because the board has already voted on the alternate. That is who that would default to. But you have moved to appoint Director McDonald. So if you do not wish to appoint Director McDonald, then you would vote in opposition of this motion.
I do understand that because we always have a representative and an alternate. I'm wondering if we would do that same thing again, and we would have a representative, whether that be Director Lee or not, and then a second if that director could not attend. Thanks.
Okay, so currently the process is that the chair puts forward recommendations for appointment, usually in December after the chair has been elected. And if the representation wishes to be changed, that's generally when that is done. So Director Cornfield, please.
Just one quick comment, I hope, and that's that we have had this discussion many times, not just with the Treaty Advisory Committee, but who represents this board, and we said no to non-elected representatives for the electoral areas, being even if they are their alternate. When they were non-elected, they cannot speak for the board, and that's what we end up doing. So anyway, yeah, I can't support this resolution.
Okay, thank you. Director Davis.
Yeah, thanks. My question is, if we do this, if we don't reappoint John McDonald, then we appoint, well, Brenda Lee automatically becomes the representative, but do we not require an alternate at this point?
I'm going to go to Mr. Yates. I believe that the board has the ability to open this up anytime they want, but it would automatically default to the alternate because of our procedures. And if the board wished to name somebody else at that particular time, then that would be up to the board.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, that is correct. If this motion fails, then Director Lee, who sits as the alternate representative, will fulfill that role. And if the board wishes to name other people to somehow take on responsibilities for this TAC table, then they're free to do that at any time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Abram, please.
Able to hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay, just want to make sure we're working. Okay, so yeah, on this issue of alternate, non-alternate, et cetera, it has very seldom come up where a representative has disappeared for some reason or other, and the alternate was then the representative, and there was no alternate. And when it has happened, I think the process sort of, the default process is, if you really want to, then you go ahead and you re-elect or you reappoint a new alternate, not a new representative. You could do either. You know, you have that right as a board, but it's the alternate takes the position and then you appoint an alternate. My only concern, I thoroughly enjoyed John when he was on the board on this committee. I thought he did a very good job. He was certainly well liked by the facilities, but the problem that I have with it is that, as has been mentioned by many of the other directors, it is the board that is being represented. And in John's case, in this particular band, this particular treaty, you would have Sayward represented on this. You would have Area A represented, Area D represented, and Campbell River, I believe, represented, and Area C represented. I'm not sure if there's anything in Area B. There has been in C. So you have a big chunk, really. I mean, geographically, probably about 65% of the regional district is being represented by a non-elected member. So, or non-elected person, not even a member. So I think, personally, just on principle, I would have a problem saying, okay, a non-elected person should represent all of these elected areas where elected representatives already sit. So it's kind of a slap in the face to those people that already sit there. Whether they want to be on the committee or not is another matter, but I think it should go back to the board somehow.
Okay, thank you, Director Abrams. Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to let the board know that I've never actually sat at a TAC meeting. I've always been the alternate to somebody and never had a chance to attend. However, I would love to attend and I would love to learn more about it. And the Clowetsis are setting up a reserve in my area. There are a lot of things that, that they might want to discuss. And I know I'm not an active participant in their meetings, that I'm an observer, to give the board some assurance. In the 27 years I've been elected, I've never missed any meetings. And what I anticipate through COVID is that there won't be that many meetings anyway for the rest of 2019 for the tax. I don't know that for sure, but I think that meetings are going to be more sparse. And if you don't like my representation, you can replace me and the alternate in January.
Okay, thank you very much. Director Unger, I take your consideration, but I'm going to move to Director Adams for a comment first, please. Director Adams.
Thank you. I'll keep it brief. In reference to the repeated comments regarding former Director McDonald as non-elected, he was elected and has stepped down. And as a result, I see absolutely no reason why he could not continue for a temporary period for the remainder of 2020. Should this motion fail, in the interest of treaty negotiations and team building and collaboration, I would put my name forward for consideration.
Thank you very much. Okay, I have nobody else on the speakers list. I will call the question. I'm just going to read the motion. That John McDonald be appointed to represent the interests of the Regional District on the Cloetes Treaty Advisory Committee for the remainder of 2020, and that he be reimbursed for such reasonable expenses as may be incurred in connection therewith. All those opposed?
Opposed.
Director Wally's opposed. Director Cornfield's opposed. Director Moglove. Director Ives. Director Lee. Director Kerr. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, let me do that again. Director Wally, Cornfield, Moglove, Ives, Lee, Unger. Director Abram, are you opposed or in favor?
In favor of the motion.
Okay, to let Director John McDonald sit as the appointed representative.
That's correct.
Okay, Director Kerr is opposed. Okay, with that being said, the motion is defeated.
Chair's vote.
I'm in favor.
Please. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. That was a great discussion, and we will be moving forward with the Cloetes at that and a letter. So on to bylaws. Don River logging bylaw.
Just before we move off the Cloetes issue, Chair, may I ask if the administration have a schedule of the TAC meetings for Cloetes that I might need to attend?
Okay, I think I'm not going to get bogged down in the details right here, Director Lee.
Yeah.
That will be direction to staff to hook up directly with you. Okay, on to N. Bylaws number 387. If I can get somebody to move receipts, please.
Move receipt.
Thank you, and I need a second. Director Unger, thank you, and to staff, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This report is a follow-up to the April 15th board meeting where additional information was requested from the board regarding an application by Don River Log to rezone the existing Sunnyvale campground in order to bring the campground into compliance and allow tenures to be issued by Flinro RD. Following the April 15th board meeting, staff has confirmed that referrals were sent out to all agencies as requested by the electoral area director. The City of Campbell River did not respond prior to the deadline. However, following the meeting, we did reach out and comments have been received since that time. I can report that the Campbell River City staff has indicated that they're not in support of an amendment at this time until the applicant is able to satisfy the requirements that would be in place with respect to their development permit guidelines for a watershed development permit area. Primarily the submission of a RAR assessment report. I can also confirm for the director that both the Weewakai and the Weewakam have also responded to the referral application, and I've provided a summary of the requirements that were provided by external agencies and the SRD requirements for development permits and rezoning applications. Primarily, we are requiring that the developer provide proof of potable water, proof of compliance with the sewage system regulations, an environmental impact assessment, a riparian areas protection regulation assessment report, and an archaeological assessment with participation of the Weewakai Nation as requested by the Weewakai. We can also confirm for the board that an OCP amendment is not required at this time, provided Part 306 of the OCP, which indicates that new campgrounds and other tourist facilities may be permitted in any portion of the planning area without amending the OCP. The zoning bylaw amendment has been provided for consideration. However, it is recommended at this time that we withhold consideration of first and second reading until the applicant is able to address the requirements provided previously. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just need clarification that everybody can hear me. And Mr. Schmooland, if you are in the building, can you please come down? My computer just did some sort of restart, so I'm working off of Betty's tablet.
I can hear you.
Thank you. So we are on receipt. I believe that Director Lee wished to speak. Director Lee.
Hi there. Yes, this application is in Area D, and this morning at the electoral areas meeting, I underlined the need to make sure that the City of Campbell River and the Weewakai were added to the referral lists for this application. Every time a letter has been received from the applicant or this issue has come up, there's a few directors that say, why are we holding this up? Can't we push this through? This is urgent. This is not urgent. This is a campground that expanded from 6 units to 20 units without SRD permission. And now they're trying to legalize what they've had there for the past, 15 years without permission, so that they can get their license of occupation from the province. So we have told the province that we will put it through a public hearing process, and we will let them know once we've been able to do that. Of course, COVID is going to be getting in the way of a public hearing to happen anytime, probably within the next month. But after that, I'm sure that this can go through the normal process, and it will give us time to talk to the Weewakai and to Campbell River and ensure that everybody's concerns are being addressed. So if there are letters from the City of Campbell River or from the Weewakai, I would like them to be added to the public hearing record once this gets first and second.
Okay, thank you. Director Cornfield.
There, I'm unmuted. I had a question through to staff. In the report, it makes reference to. There must have been a countdown timer or something. Sorry, there's someone else talking too.
Yeah, I know, they're just trying to fix my stuff here. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I would like to know, in the report, the city had written back saying they wanted to make sure there was compliance with the watershed development permit guidelines. And I wanted to know, does the SRD have a watershed development permit, or are they referring to the city? Because later in the report, and it says to the cities, I believe, had, darn, hang on a sec, I gotta go back again. They made reference, the city makes reference to requirements not in support of the amendment till time that they're satisfied. They satisfy the requirements of the watershed development permit guidelines. And I know we have those in the city. I do not know if the SRD contains them, and there's no reference in the under the page 2 of the SRD report. It makes an environmental impact assessment, but it doesn't talk about complying with watershed development permits. And as the purveyor of water, the city of Campbell River is the one that's legally responsible.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Nelson can answer your questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. through to Director Cornfield. The initial staff report was referencing the SRD's environmentally sensitive areas for basically beside a lake. It's not specific to a watershed, but certainly the SRD has development permit guidelines in place for the development to occur adjacent to the freshwater body. And additionally, we have added the requirements of the City of Campbell River's watershed development permit area for the applicant to address.
Okay, I didn't see that part in the report. Thank you for the clarity.
Thank you. So we are on receipt and I have nobody else on the speakers list. I'm going to call the question on receipt. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I will call that carried. On to part B. Thank you, Director Unger, for moving part B. Can I get a seconder, please?
Second.
Director Colburn, thank you. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair, if I could,
Yeah.
I don't believe Director Unger can make this motion. It is electoral areas only.
I'll second it.
I'm sorry. So Director Lee and then Director Colburn, thank you very much. Is there any other discussion? Seeing no other discussion, I'll call part B, which is the first and second reading of bylaw number 378.
I have just one thing. It's Director Lee. Just one thing. The Wee Red Kai did ask for an in-person meeting at the regional district with the staff so that they can be consulted on this as well. Like they wanted a formal referral, but they also wanted to have a meeting or a discussion with the regional district about this. So I think we should reach out to them and invite them to come and talk to the staff at least, and the staff can report to us about what their presentation contained.
Yeah, and Ms. Nelson has indicated that that is that's happening. So back, I've already called the question. This is for electoral areas only. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I will call first and second reading carried. Thank you. On to bylaw number 2, bylaw number 392, procedural amendment bylaw. If I can get somebody to move, please. I need somebody to move. Okay, thank you. Director Ives, Director Unger, thank you very much. And to staff, please. Mr. Yates.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this bylaw proposes to bring forward for the board's consideration 2 items which the board had asked be dealt with, those being the ability for chair to be elected in absentia and the ability, the denial of the right of directors to apply as delegations to the board. And there's a couple of other housekeeping issues which have arisen in the past few months. So that's the nature of this bylaw. It's really to implement those items that the board has asked be considered and move forward on.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion on receipt? Seeing no discussion on receipt, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call receipt carried. On to part B, which is that bylaw number 392, being a bylaw to amend the procedures application to meetings of the regional board and its committees, be now introduced and read a first time.
First.
Director Kerr, seconded by Director Wally. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried. On to part C, that the rules be suspended and that number 392 be given second and third readings. I had that moved by Director I have it moved by Director Anderson, seconded by Director Moglov. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. And on to part D, that bylaw number 392 being the Regional Board Procedure Bylaw 211, amendment number 7 be reconsidered, finally passed and adopted. I have that moved by Director Anderson, seconded by Director Moglov. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, seeing none, I'll call that carried. And now we're on to number 3, bylaw 395, which is a delegation of board authority. Move receipt, Director Wally. I need a second, please. Second by Director Unger. And on to staff, Mr. Yates, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the bylaw that the board had requested, which would delegate to the CAO authority for making grant applications within certain limits, such as $25,000 maximum, and and a number of other conditions which the board has reviewed and accepted. And so this is now to bring forward for the board to action if they wish.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question on receipt. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll move on to part B. Okay, 1 second, I'm moving back to my desk because my technology is working. Okay, sorry about that. We're just having some technical difficulties. So part B, that the bylaw 395 being the bylaw to delegate authority. Just 1 second, please. This is ridiculous. Sorry. I'm sorry, everybody. I just have to get back to where we are. So can somebody please bring me up to, have we moved and seconded part B? Staff, please.
Yeah, Brad has moved and Gerald seconded B.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, seeing none, I will call that carried. On to part C, please. If I can get somebody to move. Thank you, Gerald. And seconded, Director Ives. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll call part C carried. On to part D, that the bylaw 395 being grant funding delegation of authority bylaw 2020 be reconsidered, finally passed and adopted. Moved by Director Colburn, second by Director Ives. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. Thank you. On to correspondence. I have a
Move
motion for
move receipt of all.
Thank you. Is there a second?
All correspondence.
Yes, I've got that. Thank you, Director Unger. Okay, is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on all the correspondence. Although, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. Thank you. Mr. Yates, can you please move the screen because I don't have any of my other technology right now. Thank you. On to members' reports. If I can get somebody to
move receipt.
Thank you. Second. Ms. Director Ives, thank you. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank
Jim
you.
Abram.
Yep.
Sorry, I wasn't fast enough on the chat. Could I just make a comment here, unrelated to the marine protected areas, but seemed like a good spot.
Okay.
I missed your comment at the very beginning of the meeting because I had to go lay down for a minute, and I just wanted to sincerely thank all of the board members, all of the staff members, yourself, everybody that sent such kind, wonderful regards to me when I had my accident. And I truly appreciated it. I truly appreciated having a good alternate director that could attend in a couple of meetings, and our staff, Dave Leach and his staff, for handling some of the Area C issues that came up during the time I was away. And
you've disappeared again, Director Abram.
for being so kind while I was away.
Okay.
Now, continue to be nice while I'm back.
Okay. Thank you. We had an addition to the agenda today from Director Lee regarding the Vancouver Island libraries. Oh, sorry, we still have receipt on the floor. No other speakers. Is there anybody in opposition? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. On to Director Lee, who had the addition regarding Vancouver Island libraries. Director Lee?
Thank you. The Vancouver Island Regional Library System is carrying on through this pandemic. We've had 3 electronic meetings, 1 big board meeting and 2 executive meetings. The staff that are still working have expanded all digital resources to the public and are continuing to respond to community needs. The e-library traffic went up system-wide more than 134% since COVID. And I believe that Campbell River Branch people and Area D has put the usage of e-library up near 200%. I mean, it was way bigger than all the other areas. There's a great need for the expanded services. We just added a new program yesterday called Creative Bug, which is an arts and crafts program. We also have Linda, which teaches you about electronics, and many other online services and resources. The provincial government sent us an additional $43,000 in grants after our usual grant allocation, and we have put it into the digital sphere, and we are doing our very best to continue with library services in every community, and all of our trustees are showing up and working hard for the library system. So I'm really pleased to report that we are on an even keel, and we have started planning for the recovery of our branches, started investigating what we need to do to make them absolutely safe for the staff, the public, and anyone who enters our doors. So we will be ready when Bonnie Henry gives the green light to open these public services. And if there's any questions, just ask me at some point. There's also some communications coming out from VRL to all the directors, to the board, about all of our additional services. So just to let you know, oh, and we did supply free Wi-Fi at all of our branches, so that people who would normally be able to use a device in a library can park near the library and still get a Wi-Fi signal. So in almost every location, we have that available 24/7, except for Parksville and Sydney, who did request that we reduce the Wi-Fi availability to 8 hours a day because of the crowds that it was attracting around their branch. So we did that. So if there's any issues with your library services in your communities, let me know. I'll make sure it gets to the board and everything's ticking along well. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Can I get somebody to move Director Lee's report? Thank you, Director Colburn, seconded by Director Ives. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Or sorry, is there anybody opposed?
Madam Chair, I had a comment, Jim, Adrian.
Okay, thank you, Director Abram.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know if it showed up on your chat or not, but I just wanted to thank Brenda for her advocacy at the library, extension of the Wi-Fi service outside of the library doors, outside of the buildings and whatever reach there is for Wi-Fi. Certainly on Quadra Island, we lobbied for it. I asked Brenda specifically if it could be expanded, and she got it for 24 hours per day for the Quadra Library. So people are able to have a hotspot basically on Quadra where we have very limited high-speed internet. So thank you, Brenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll call a question. Is there anybody opposed? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. I did have a request from Director Cornfield to add another thing to the agenda. I am reluctant to do that, Director Cornfield, just because I have to shut this down and give and restart, and then we have another meeting after because of my technology, and we have another meeting after this, and then of course the Strathcona Gardens Commission. So I'm sure that we can give that to staff to make sure that a report comes back regarding the TAC for the next meeting. So thank you very much. If I can get somebody to move the CAO receipt for closed session.
So moved.
Thank you, Director Lee. Second, Director Unger. And on to part B. Oh, sorry, I'll call the question. All those opposed?
Didn't we miss the Marine Protected Area Network report?
We did that.
Director Abrams did that.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried. On to part B. Director Colburn moves. Second.
Second.
Thank you. And I'll call the question, and that's that we move into closed session under sections 91C, 91F, 91G, 91J, 91K, 91N, 91O, and 92A of the Community Charter. I have no speakers. Is there anyone opposed? And that is carried. So in order to facilitate, that is carried. Move termination. Thank you. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Director Kerr. Is there anyone opposed? That's carried. Thank you, everybody.
Mr. Leach?